G'day, and on today's episode we're talking polyrhythms. What are they? How can you work them out? What are some cool ways to practice them? Many things coming. Let's make music go time. Okay, so what is a polyrhythm? Well, a polyrhythm is basically where you have two or more rhythms happening simultaneously. It might be described as something like 2/3, where I've got two beats happening in the same space of time as three beats. It sounds something like this. Now in my left hand, I've got two. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. In the same space of time, my right hand is doing 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. That's a basic polyrhythm. Today, we're going to show you a really cool formula that'll help you work out any polyrhythm you like. I'm going to show you a really cool little hack that'll help you hear the polyrhythm differently. I'm going to show you some ways that you can apply practicing it on your instrument. Let's check them out. Okay, so I've got a nifty little formula that's going to help you work out any polyrhythm you like. In the case of, say, 2/3, we have a top number, 2, and a bottom number, 3. Now the top number represents the subdivision that you'll be using, and the bottom number represents the grouping or phrasing that you'll be using. So what I mean by that, in the case of 2/3, the top number is 2. What that means is I need to express the number 2 as a subdivision. And for me, that's an eighth note, because I'm dividing the quarter note into two eighth notes. So I'm going to be using eighth notes for 2/3. The bottom number is the grouping or phrasing of said eighth notes. So I'm playing eighth notes, but I'm going to be accenting or phrasing every third eighth note. So coming back to our example would be 1, 2, 3, eighth notes, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Left hand's going to play every third eighth note. So top number gives me a subdivision, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Bottom number gives me the grouping, so I'm going to be going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So that's the formula. So in the case of, say, 3/4, the top number is 3. That expressed as a subdivision is an eighth note triplet, because that's dividing the quarter note into 3. The bottom number, 4, tells me that I need to phrase or play every fourth triplet, and that's how I'm going to generate 3/4. So I'd get this: 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So that's the formula. You can put any two numbers on top of each other and the formula will tell you exactly how to work it out. But it should be said that not all of these are easy. If I took some higher numbers, like for example 5/7, well, the top number expressed as a subdivision, 5, that's going to be quintuplets. So I'm already dealing in a subdivision that I might not be as comfortable with. Let alone that, the bottom number is 7. That means I'm going to have to accent or phrase every 7th quintuplet. Now that could be really tough in the beginning, but the formula holds. So the formula will tell you how to do it, but how to achieve it and how to execute it, that's another story. Okay, so something worth mentioning is all these polyrhythms we're talking about can be inverted. What I mean by that is, for example, 2/3 can also be perceived as 3/2, because remember, you've got two beats happening in the same space of time as three beats. When I say 2/3, it's implied that 3 is the pulse, and I'm implying 2 beats across that. If I was to do 3/2, it's essentially going to sound the same in your ears, except that now I'm having 2 in the pulse, I'm implying 3 beats over that. So this kind of comes down to, where do you feel the pulse and where do you feel the accent or the implied rhythm? So I've got a really, really cool little trick that you can do to get you to flip your perception of these polyrhythms. So I want to try it out. So let's just use 2/3. I'm going to show you a cool little trick. So it sounds like this. What happens, right? If I was to do that on my hands and I just started playing 2/3, it sounds like this. Now, the interesting thing is, if you close your eyes or don't look at the screen, it just sounds like I'm going ba, 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 ba. The fact that I'm using two hands alludes to something more complicated. But here's the cool bit, right? At the moment, chances are you're either feeling this in 3 or 2, right? So, how do we get this to change? Really cool trick. Both the sounds are the same. What I want to do is make one of the sounds different. So all I'm going to do is move my left hand to the desk, which is going to have a louder, stronger sound. Chances are that might drag your ear to perceive that as the pulse. So I'm going to move my hand up without changing the rhythm. Here we go. To the desk. So maybe 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Maybe that's how you're hearing the rhythm, yeah? Pretty cool. If I wanted to hear the 3 as a pulse, all I have to do is put my right hand on the desk on the slightly louder sound, and maybe your ear will perceive that as the beat. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So that's kind of cool. So my idea is this, that you have these two different beats going on. Generally, I think people will gravitate towards one and not the other. Probably the one they're most comfortable with or familiar with. But there's a really cool trick, is that you can actually change your perception. So hopefully that makes sense, is that 2/3 can also be perceived as 3/2. It's just, where are you feeling the beat? And you can use sound to maybe trick your brain into hearing it a certain way. Okay, so let's try something like 3/4 and see if I can do the same hack with it. So I'm just going to play it on my knees, and then I'm going to alternatively put my left hand to the desk and then my right hand to the desk. It'll be interesting to see if I can get you to flip your perception. Is it based on a 4 pulse or is it based on a 3 pulse? So when I start, you're going to hear it a certain way. I don't know which way that is. You might hear it as a 3, you might hear it as a 4, but I'm going to get my hands to swap, and hopefully you can hear both. So here's 3/4 or 4/3. Left hand to the desk. And back. All right, right hand. So let me know if that was able to flip your perception of the polyrhythm. I feel it's really important to do this because you don't want to have like a dominance on one pulse. It's great to be able to shift your pulse to a 3 or to a 4. So you can try this out with any polyrhythm you know, get it going on your knees, but then shift one hand to a louder or more dominant sound, and chances are that's going to draw your ear to perceive that as the pulse. Super cool hack, try it out. Okay, so I just wanted to mention something else about perceiving these polyrhythms in both of their iterations, so 2/3 versus 3/2. Whenever I learn a polyrhythm, what I'm going to try and do pretty quickly once I've got it under my hands is I'm going to try and flip my hands. What I mean by that is, let's say I was doing 2 in the left hand and 3 in the right. I'm going to try and flip it so I'm doing 2 in the right and 3 in the left. So I show an example of that. So I'll do the desk thing as well so you can hear like clearly difference between the two pulses. So what if we do the 3/4 again, and I'm going to do 3 in my left hand on the desk and 4 in my right hand on the knee. And then what I'm going to do is I'll do, say, 4 rounds of that, and then I'm going to flip them. So my left hand will be doing the 4 and my right will be doing the 3. So have a listen. There we go. 3/4 to begin. Left hand. All right, flip. So if we count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, flip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Super cool. Really tricky, but the whole idea of this is it'll, again, eradicate dominance to one particular pulse. So you can imply anything over anything. Really cool trick. So let's try something else. Let's try, say, a 3/5, for example. So if we come back to our formula, we got 3/5. Top number is 3, which means I'm going to be using triplets as my subdivision. Bottom number is 5, which means I'm going to be playing every 5th triplet. So I'm going to hold a pulse in my right hand, thinking triplets. I'm going to play every 5th triplet with my left hand. So I'm going to do that for a while. Then I'm going to flip my hands where I've got 5 in the left and 3 in the right. Have a listen to this. Flip. Flip. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And flip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. So that's pretty cool. Pretty tricky, but definitely worth practicing both versions. So if you can learn to flip your hands, again, what I was saying before is you can eradicate dominance. Anyway, definitely worth checking out. Try to do your polyrhythms, try to flip the system. Super tricky, but super cool. Okay, so there's my little ideas on how to work on polyrhythms and how to get better at them. But then everything's been based on rhythm at this stage, and I thought, well, let's take a minute to think about how could you apply these to your instrument. So my instrument of choice is guitar and bass, and we can definitely look at doing some polyrhythms on those. But before we get into that, I thought we might look at something, I think the instrument that's the easiest to get these things going on, because we've been doing all this stuff with hands and switching hands, would be the piano. I mean, that seems quite obvious because I've got 2 hands and I could play 2 notes at the same time on the piano and play one of these polyrhythms. Now, the really great added advantage of doing these with notes rather than just rhythms is the notes can actually really help us to hear the polyrhythms in certain ways. So we get on the piano, I'll show you a couple of really simple ideas, and then you can definitely expand on these and go nuts. So let's start with the most simple polyrhythm we had today, which was the 2/3. So if I was to do a 2/3, all I've got to do is do the 3 with this finger and the 2 with this finger. I play it like a typewriter because I'm not very good at piano, but I can make a 2/3 and I can pick 2 different notes and they're going to be really distinguishable and you'll be able to hear the 2 rhythms. So what if I took, say, a nice low C in my left hand, and then maybe I'll play a nice little 3rd up the octave in my right hand, separating the notes, different notes, going to really be able to hear the polyrhythm at play. So this is a different ballpark when you're working with notes. There's a whole new universe that can be open to you. So let's have a listen to that. If I do the 2/3, I'll do 3 in the low C, and I'll do 2 in my right hand with this high E. So it would sound like this. Nice and simple. But if you focus in on the low C, you can really hear the 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If I focus on my right hand playing the high E, I can really hear the 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So that's really cool because you've got a different perception now. It's similar to my idea about playing different sounds with your hands, but now we're using different notes. And the cool thing about this is we have another level of perception here. So when I play this, we have a perceived root note and a major 3rd. So if I do the switching hands trick with this, what I feel is going to happen is your ear's going to assume that the root note is the pulse. And I think this is really cool because to me, this can actually be even more powerful than just switching hands to louder and softer sounds. So check it out. I'll do the 2/3 and then I'll flip the hands and hopefully you'll hear it as a 3/2. So here we go. Flip. Flip. And so hopefully that made sense in that your ear's perceiving the root note as a pulse. It's a fairly natural assumption for your ear to make. So this is really, really cool. This opens up a whole world of interesting possibilities. So let's take a slightly more interesting polyrhythm. Let's go back and look at, say, that, maybe we'll do the 3/4. So I'll get that going here. So that's going to be 4 in the left hand, 3 in the right hand. So that would sound like this. And I can flip my hands. And back. Flip. Super cool. Again, I feel like your ear gravitates towards the low root note as a pulse. So I'm certainly hearing that stronger depending on what my left hand is playing. So another thing that you can really try, which gets really interesting with this stuff, is you can start thinking about, rather than just these static notes, you could start moving notes around with your hands. So a couple of really fun little things I've been trying lately is just, if you did, say, the 3/4 with 3 in the right hand, well, this is playing 3 notes for every 4 of these. So I could do a little 3-note melodic cycle in my right hand, and that's just going to give the thing a little bit more life. So instead of just doing the E, I could just go 1, 2, 3, and just walk up that C major scale. So this is going to be going 1, 2, 3. Left hand's going to stay doing all 4 on the C note. So that'd sound like this. Let's see. So that's kind of cool, because that's, to me, that melodic cycle is really reinforcing the 3 phrase across this pulse. So that's kind of cool. I could try and flip the hand, so I could maybe get my left hand doing a 4-note cycle and my right hand staying still. So I could do maybe, just for now, real easy, I'll just walk up the C major scale, but I'm going to stick to my 1 note on my right hand. So that would sound a bit like this. Let's see. Super cool. So that, again, that's sort of reinforcing the 4 as a figure there. And then if I want to get super fancy with it, I'm probably going to bugger this up, but I could try doing both at the same time. So I could do 4 in the left hand and 3 in the right hand. We'll see if I can do that. Let's have a listen. That's really cool. So we're really, really reinforcing we've got a 3 and a 4 happening at the same time. So I love that stuff. Okay, just one more while I'm on the piano. Again, this is just food for thought, stuff that you can muck around with. As I've got to remind you, I am not a piano player, but I can get some of this stuff out because I practice my polyrhythms and I can hear them. And it's giving you some really interesting melodic devices. There's some interesting harmonies happening in there. So another thing you could try, and this is something I do a lot of with like writing melodies and riffs, is let's say in my right hand, I went back to my simple 3. And before, what I did is I did a 3-note cycle because that's the phrase, it's in 3. What if I did a 4-note cycle, so, and added that extra note? So I'll just repeat those 4 notes in a row, but remember, that's phrasing in 3. So something really interesting is going to happen is each of these notes will get a turn at being the starting note of our cycle. So what I would actually be happening here would be, if I just count it out, I'd be getting 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and then I'm back. So this, I love this sort of stuff because this is going to give me a rhythm of 3, a melodic cycle of 4. So it's like I've got 2 different ways to perceive what's happening up here. I'm just going to stick to straight up 4 on the C note down here, but I'm going to do a 4-note cycle in the right hand. So that'd sound like this, still on the 3/4 polyrhythm. I really find that quite interesting, is because I'm getting these harmonies as a shifting. I'm getting those two together on the next cycle. It's like a nice little major sixth to the fifth, to the fourth, and back to the one. They're the four different like sort of line-up points of my right hand melody versus my left hand C note. Anyway, that's some super cool ideas. Obviously, you could go crazy. I mean, if you're a piano player and you're watching this, which is probably unlikely because it's mostly guitar and bass, I'm sure you could go absolutely ballistic on doing some really cool different polyrhythms with like polymelodies, or sorry, polymelodies. That's the word that I just created in my mind just then. Definitely worth trying out. So that's the piano, super transferable when we talked about this stuff. But if we're talking about guitar or bass, this gets physically a lot more demanding, because we can't just designate one hand to each rhythm. Both hands are going to have to work together to do both rhythms at the same time. So now we're talking about fingers individually doing polyrhythms. So, but still worth trying. Challenging, but can sound really cool. So what if we tried something like that? So let's see. Get me old guitar out. Now, that makes noises, appropriate guitar-like noises. Okay, so what if I just started with that? I'm just going to sit on that 3/4 because that seems to be the one we're doing a lot today. So what if I did that? I'm going to do the same idea on the piano. I'm going to pick a low note and a high note. Just for ease, I might just use G as my low root note, and I might, similar to the keyboard before, I might go up an octave to the major third to a high B. So I'm getting a nice little major 10th interval there. And I'm just going to try playing some of these polyrhythms. So if I did that 3/4, 4 will be G, the B will be playing 3. So that'd sound like this. Super cool, like nice and simple, but there's just a lovely sound to that. So that's really cool, but you can see it's a lot more challenging. My left hand was just hanging out playing those two notes, but my right hand had to have 4 in the thumb and 3 with my middle finger. That's really cool. And then I could try flipping them. So that was just a flip where I had the 3 in my thumb and the 4 in my middle finger. You know, I could try the 3-note cycle on my top notes, maybe there, but keep the bass note the same. That's going to require some finger dexterity because this guy's going to have to stay the same. These are going to have to move around, but I can have a go. Maybe that's kind of cool. I like that. Gee, I'm just going to try this now. I'll try that 4-note melody. Getting up to the 6th there. I don't know how that's going to go, but I'm just going to do it nice and slow and see what it sounds like. So maybe yeah, that's kind of pretty hard though. So you can sort of see these instruments a little bit tricky to do these things on, but again, worth having a go at some of this stuff. So that's a couple little food for thought ideas about what you can do with your instrument with these polyrhythms, but I would highly recommend spending a fair bit of time practicing them just by tapping on the desk or on your knees, because you want to internalize the sound of these polyrhythms before you start doing all these little gymnastic things with your fingers. Anyway, good luck with it, have fun, see you later.